Welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast with your hosts Warwick Bidwell and Nicole Cox. Divert your phone and grab a brew as Waz and Nick unpack tips, tales, secrets and stuff-ups from guests both inside and outside your trade, helping educate and inspire you to break the cycle of gut-busting and money stress and create a true trade business.
G'day listeners. G'day Coxie.
G'day Warwick, how are you?
I'm very well. And at the play school table today, we're going to say g'day to Dan Pollard from Fergus. Welcome back to the podcast, mate.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, glad to have the one caped crusader with us. And I must say, I always love the Calvin Klein look of our male model on the show, looking flash today, Warwick.
Oh, Dan, I love having you on the show. This is great fun.
I'm doing the high-collared black thing, you know. I just need a longer neck to make it work.
I tell you, it's working for me.
It's just missing the Fergus logo on the pocket here, mate.
Missing something else, I tell you.
So for the listeners who can't actually see what the heck we're all talking about, Nicole is sporting a very lovely, does that have a particular label, Nicole?
It's a country road cape.
Ooh, bit of country road cape because it's like in Queensland, it's kind of cold, but not really cold enough to wear a jumper.
Well, I feel freezing, but by lunchtime I'll be boiling hot in true Queensland fashion.
And she's looking fabulous. I mean, she's got platinum hair and a platinum cape, and it's just looks, it's dynamic, isn't it, really?
And
thank you, Dan. Can we interview you every Friday? These compliments are a great way to start my day.
Nicole's productivity levels are going to go through the roof after this podcasting. We're so psyched about the day. It's interesting talking about superheroes and capes and those sorts of things. We're having a bit of a pre-chat, as we tend to do before we press record on these podcasts. And Dan, you guys at Fergus are actually the major sponsors of the Tradies in Business Excellence Awards. So for anybody who listens to these episodes in real time, which I think is a lot of our listeners actually, they literally sweat on the episodes coming out. So Fergus have been fantastic supporters of the Tradies in Business Excellence Awards. We know Dan from previous interviews and chats with him is very passionate about small to medium business and I guess helping people do things differently to the old ways. But talking about superhumans, we were just rattling off some of the entries into the Excellence Awards and some of the incredible stories of business owners and the real bosses, the business supporters, the sidekicks, I guess, which maybe understates their role. It's probably like Batman and Robin. You know, Robin really did all the work. Batman was just had the fancy cape. But some amazing people that deserve to wear capes as well, I think. So excited to roll those awards out soon. But Dan, you've got some great stuff that we're going to chat about today. I can't remember how long it is since we had you on the podcast.
It'll be 6 months. 6 months.
Yeah, it's at least 6 months. There's been a lot of things unfold in the COVID world and building booms and lockdowns and all sorts of stuff. I guess one of the things that we've seen with the trades is they've become very busy. They've got a lot of work on, which is fantastic for them. And some of them are struggling a bit to manage clients and longer time frames and materials delays. I know you've got plenty of insight on this, mate. What are you seeing with your customers and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think first of all, if those who don't know who I am, I should talk about 1 minute who I am so they go, oh, this guy is not just just
Dan from Fergus, like, oh, he's just one of the employees. Although that's probably a good segue, mate, to something we're going to talk about today. So you're like the employee of Fergus, aren't you?
Yeah, the employee. So for those who don't know, I'm Dan. I'm now 45. Been a plumber since I was 17. Self-employed since I was 22. Had a couple of guys, been through one business, didn't pay my taxes. Looking back now, had an emotional burnout at 24 from that stressful time. Started again at 25, 26, employed a couple of people again, closed that one again because of the grief and stress of just trying to manage a business and all the jobs. Came back at 30, had read a lot, learned about business, got that third business to 25 staff and very successful, and sold it for over $1 million. And at the same time had also done 2 software startups and did Fergus software, and that now has 70 staff. And we've now got 3 to 5 staff in the UK, 15 staff in Aussie, and 45 odd staff in New Zealand. And it's easy, and it's really easy. So I've really got the hang. So my first 10 years were a complete and utter hopeless desert wasteland of disaster. and then the next 10 years were actually very difficult but very successful. And so I do feel well qualified. I've made every single mistake that's possible to make, and then got it all right. So
that's a good wrap up, mate.
It is.
I was feeling a little bit depressed at the start of the wrap up though, because it was like, bloody hell, you've failed at this and lost that, and it's such a common story though. People see lots of overnight successes. And they look at, often it's people in their 40s, I guess, 40s and 50s, that all of a sudden seem to have this amazingly successful enterprise. And what most of us don't see is the gritty, grimy, muddy stuff for the 10, 15, 20 years prior to that. And
it's dumb. And so for those who are listening, I've read a lot of the tradie awards, the applications, and I bang on about this all the time. It's incredible, those of you guys who've interacted with, how much improvement they made in 6 to 9 months. Honestly, it's amazing how much a bit of mentoring can I would just kick myself. I wasted 7 or 8 years mucking around that 6 months of coaching would have fixed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So get mentoring, get coaching, sign up.
And it's hard. I said this to a prospective client recently, and I haven't found a way to say it without myself feeling a little maybe conceited and
you don't have a problem with that. You are
manipulative. is just the power of actually having a mentor or a coach, or it doesn't have to even be a paid one, although I think a bit of hurt money actually makes a difference to people's commitment levels. But yeah, it's one of the most common things we hear from our clients, and I'm sort of 13 years in the game, and Coxie, I think you've got 10 years or so in this gig of coaching, and it's something we hear very commonly is, well, what do you wish you'd done differently? It's like, I wish I'd got a coach at the start.
Yeah, at the start.
And it's hard to say that to a prospective client without feeling like I'm just pitching my services, because I am. I want them to actually sign up and make change, because we know how much of a difference it makes, Dan.
Well, just tell them to call me and I'll tell them.
Dan from Fergus said you should get a coach.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Don't be like Dan.
I love it.
You don't be like Dan.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, though, there is an awful lot of value in learning those lessons the hard way.
No, I don't think there is. No.
I think if I even reflect on my own time making some pretty big mistakes in business, had I not have made them, I would have continued on my merry way and continued to make them until it came to the ultimate end, one way or the other. So I think that the hurt in some of those cases really motivated me to find the change. It's something we talk about a lot here.
Yeah, no, I disagree.
Okay, good.
Disagree.
Tell me your thoughts.
You would never send an apprentice out in the van on day one to do his own jobs.
Agree.
Right, that's bollocks. They need coaching, training, guiding, and tutoring for a couple of years to learn it. So why the hell do we go in business with no training, coaching, mentoring from day one? It's crazy. Why do you struggle? You should be pushed in growth in a safe environment.
I totally agree with that.
So growth and being pushed, totally fine. Doing struggle street for the sake of it is just dumb. It's painful. People commit suicide. I mean, I nearly went bankrupt. Why would you do that? Just because that's dumb. Sorry.
I don't disagree with you. And I think that there are times when there are lessons that just will not be learned until we feel a little bit of pain. Now, it certainly doesn't need to get to that point. I'd hate to see it to get to either of those points: bankruptcy, suicide, mental health issues, any of those, and a little bit of pain to learn maybe not even pain, but the understanding of the difference between the easy way, the right way, the challenged way, the difficult way, the difference between the two is where we can be.
Pain in executing is enough.
Not for most people. I in more than a decade of coaching people, it seems that there is a particular level of suffering people need to experience in order to actually choose change.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what Coxie's saying,
right?
In some regard, is I mean, I agree, Dan, that it's crazy to go out there and think, well, I'm just going to go and screw it up enough and then I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
because I think that's a crazy approach, and sadly, a lot of people actually take that approach. It's like, I'm just going to wing it and I'll figure it out. It's like, dude, you're in for a life of pain.
A lot of pain.
And yet there is so much information. There's so much support, help. There's programs. There's free stuff available to people, and they choose suffering because of whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, thank goodness. But my own personal theory is I think there's a particular suffering threshold that everybody has. Some have a really big threshold, and some have a smaller one where they'll make change earlier on in the piece. But I think everybody actually needs to, in inverted quotes, hit their threshold of suffering before they'll actually go, okay, this is shit. I need to change something.
Shall we just cue some meditation music and just talk about finding inner peace? Because actually, business is actually that. Once it actually is inner peace of going, oh, no bugger all, I'll get help. And it's a journey of learning how to run a business and not being stressed. That's actually one of those big lessons of running a business, is not to learn how to not be stressed.
And I'm going to use that as a Chuck Norris segue for long-time listeners. Know that I love a good Chucky Norris segue into...
Chuck Norris doesn't push up. Chuck Norris pushes earth.
I've been trying to push the earth down for years at the gym, and it doesn't seem to be working. I throw up, but not push up. Anyway, so one of these things about business. I literally had this conversation this morning with the owner of the gym that I go to. He was sort of picking my brains a bit on some ideas, and he's only a young guy, and he's actually worked out pretty early on that he is not his business and his business is not him. And he was talking about how almost freeing that's been for him to accept that the business and him are two separate things, and he's now starting to look at it very differently. And he said the words to me, which is like music to my ears and my heart. You know, I'm building this thing with the idea that I could sell it. I probably won't, but I'm building it so that it could be sold at any minute.
100%.
And it's a place that we don't see many people get to, Coxie. Through their journey in being, again, in air quotes, business owners. There are actually people doing work, not actually people owning a business. And I'd be interested to hear more from you, Dan, and maybe we could all have a disagreement about that as well, because I love a bit of ding dong on a podcast episode. I've been missing our little arm wrestling sessions, Dan. It's great, mate.
Well, I think we might agree. Like,
it's better than talking about social media and cash flow, I got to say.
Oh, yes.
So,
Coxie was just a bit sick in her mouth then.
If I can make a coherent sense of my thinking. So I'll touch on what is a bloody business. And it's really complicated because a business is a living entity, right? And so as soon as you create it, it has obligations that the government has mandated around tax obligations, employee obligations, standard obligations, building control obligations. You buy vehicles, you have all these obligations. And so you've basically you have created an entity that must comply with all of these things, whether you like it or not. You have no choice in that thing. And the reason, and you think about, okay, why is there a need for businesses to be controlled? It's because if businesses are left unchecked, they will literally employ child labour to work for the lowest price to do work.
Mhm.
So businesses need to be controlled by legislation because they will do unbelievable harm to the environment and people and property in the chase of profit, right? Because businesses are created for pure greed. So their innate essence is to be greedy, right? Because businesses can only create wealth by taking advantage and exploiting gaps in market, right? So exploiting resources, exploiting someone needs money, right? So, and it's that what's it called when there's a gap in the market and someone needs something? Constraints, right? What's that thing called? Supply and demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore regulation has evolved to control supply and demand in businesses so they behave ethically, right? So that's what, when you're entering into a business, you're entering into a world of where your desire to have money, basically greed, which is fine, is a known thing, and businesses must be tempered on their greed to follow and conduct themselves in a certain behavior, right? So that's what you're actually signing up for, and you don't realize it when you first sign up for it. So cool. So you create this thing and all these obligations. So you've created a Frankenstein, right? This thing that's been cobbled together of body parts. And then, so you don't own the business. And so well, then what the hell are shares? And so it's really important to understand the business, just call it ABC trading, that's the business. But no one owns it because that's now a living, recognized, legal compliant thing that the government will hold to account. So what you own is the shares in the business, right? Because that's what you as the director are in charge of adding value to the shares, because it's the shares that you own and can sell, not the business. And so as soon as you go, oh, shucks, I don't own the business, I own shares in the business because that's sellable because the business is its own entity. But I'm now tasked by law, whether I like it or not, as a director, to add maximum value to the shareholders. So yes, it's to myself, but it's getting that mindset of realizing I am now held accountable by law to be a professional director to run this business properly. And then when you start going, oh, shucks, then the question you should ask yourself is, do I have the skill sets to be a director of my own company? And the answer is most of you don't.
Mm.
And so as soon as you start going, shucks, I'm not competent to run my own company, I have no idea of what I'm supposed to do, that's friggin' awesome, because that's the great question that you ask yourself is, and you go, I am actually incompetent to run my own business. I'm a competent tradesperson. Cool. So then what you do is you then go and get help from mentors, accountants, lawyers, and then you start working around the systems and processes that need to be in place so that you can comply effortlessly with all the requirements required to be in business and behave like a business owner.
There's a big difference between a tradesperson and a business owner. I'm really intrigued to hear your opinion, Dan, on why many tradespeople don't get to that point of being a business owner.
You want my honest answer? Or do you want the politically answer?
No, give us your honest answer.
Coxie's wearing a cape. She's ready for everything today.
This is going to get, you might cut this if you cut this.
No,
I don't cut
nothing.
anything, Dan. I just put a little E on it if it's explicit.
I'm not explicit. This is going to be controversial, man. Like, this could be a lot of hate. Like, I'm often accused of being an overthinker, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that my whole life. And I'm like, to me, an overthinker is somebody who thinks about possibilities that can't exist, like asteroids hitting the Earth. I'm like, I don't think about stuff like that. I actually think about how things work. And so what I now say is, no, I'm not an overthinker. You're just an underthinker. Right? And people don't think enough is the honest answer.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually, right? And that's totally cool, right? Because that's what we go to school to be taught, to learn. Right. And the only reason I've learned to think is because I struggled so hard in 8 years. I was like, I'm not going to fail the third time. I have to start reading and learning. Mm. And then you start going, oh, I just wasn't thinking well. Mm. I was just selfish. Like, I'm happy to. It was terrible. My job when I first started was to get money from your wallet to my wallet. That was my goal. Mm-hmm. Guess what? That doesn't work for very long. Mm-hmm. And so that's why people need training to understand these concepts of, you're a business owner. This is what it means to be a business owner. This is how it looks. And how are you supposed to learn that stuff unless someone trains you and teaches you and you do your apprenticeship in business? I mean, blind spots are blind spots.
Yeah. You can't think outside the box if you can't see outside the box. So you need someone who's already outside the damn box to come and say, hey, there's an outside. Hey, let me give you a hand to, climb up here and have a look.
Well, I think there should be a business license that you can't start a business unless you've done a 1-year business degree. I truly believe that.
Well,
I don't think that's a silly idea.
I'm going to disagree a little bit, Dan, with the whole
Germany,
schooling thing.
You can't operate a business in Germany without a business license. You have to do the training and pass courses that you know how to run a business. And it should be the same here.
I agree with the principle. The problem I have with all of that is I don't actually believe school or university anymore, and it hasn't done for decades, actually teaches people how to think. And I've got, I've got a bunch of letters after my name in business and finance.
RIPP?
Say again, sorry?
Nothing.
Did you just swear at me?
A little bit.
And they taught me very, very, very little about business and running a business. They didn't teach me how to think. They taught me a whole bunch of rules, which are still important, and there are some great courses out there. I mean, you can do executive MBAs and MBAs and stuff that are very good skill sets to develop, and it's still a lot of theory. And I mean, this kind of loops back to what Coxie was saying earlier and what we were discussing around making mistakes. I think it's like my 9-year-old daughter. I'm teaching her to drive already. So she's driving the car up and down the paddock, and it's done. She's able to stall the car. She's able to get it wrong, crunch the gears, do all that stuff in a controlled environment where the failures are planned by someone else who has the insight to know that nothing catastrophic is going to happen. She's not going to blow the car up or run into a tree. Yes. But when we hang everything on a piece of paper, I mean, just have a look at the trades. How many apprentices and tradespeople are getting a ticket and they're qualified, quote unquote, but are they actually a good tradesperson?
Yeah. I mean, it's, because, when I did my time, we had the A, B, and C paper. So A was plumbing, B was gas fitting, and C was business. And so you couldn't go into business unless you had completed your 1-year business paper.
Yeah.
And that was still very good for me. Like that still taught me a lot about accounting, taught me a lot about, just didn't do anybody good, but it was still better than nothing.
It's a great, you're a great case study, and so many people are like it. They're like, oh, I've done a management certificate or something, or a business administration certificate. And I think, well, that's a great start. And it needs to be more than that. And it comes back to what we talk about with having mentors and coaches, and, even if it's just going to seminars and hanging out with other business owners who are doing cool stuff. And I think it's that willingness to think critically. And I actually think, and I'm maybe an overthinker sometimes, Coxie, is people need to be taught how to think more critically about what they're doing and where they're at. They need self-reflection and insight building courses, I think. Because the business information is out there. I mean, bloody hell, I could go Google cash flow forecast and I could teach myself how to do a cash flow forecast in a 7-minute YouTube video.
One of the amazing things reading with the business awards is pretty much every single success story is underpinned by the partner running the business. That's interesting.
So we just all need wonder wives that can actually run the show for us.
Do you think, though, the thing that's standing out to me here is we have to get comfortable with admitting that we don't know what we don't know, and that's okay, because that's where it all starts. That's where the knowledge seeking begins. That's where the confidence to take on somebody else's advice. It all starts with being comfortable enough to be vulnerable, and I don't know what I don't know.
But isn't it worse than that? Like, what's that, the ignorance chart? Is that because you don't know that you don't know? You don't know that you don't know that you don't know.
This could get really confusing.
Yeah, I know, but it's true though, right?
I haven't had anywhere near enough coffee for that conversation. or whiskey, one of the two.
Yeah.
But I really do think it comes back to, I think if we were to look at the traditional trajectory of a tradie that moves into a business owner, they start out doing their apprenticeship. They may come through, be a great apprentice. Suddenly they start to think, I can do this better than the guy I've been working with. They go out on their own. They're still working for a wage. They're not business owners. And it comes to a point where I think we leave our ego on the table and we step up and we say, okay, it's time to be vulnerable. I don't know what I don't know. I think that reflects back to often where traditionally, and this is a little bit sexist, but I'm talking traditionally, this is traditionally where the wives get involved.
Yeah.
They seem to be a little more comfortable with coming into a trade business and immediately recognizing what they don't know. Because I'm not a tradie, I don't actually know where I fit. I don't have that knowledge, but I can see there's probably a better way to do the business side of this. Let's start looking at what that looks like. And that's when I feel usually those conversations start to happen. That said, we still have a bunch of clients where the wives aren't involved or they're not even married. They figure it out at a point in time themselves. But I think it very much comes back to that point where you make a decision to leave the ego on the table and we admit that we don't know what we don't know and we don't know what we don't know, don't know.
Dan,
should do a Zen session.
I can see flowers on the screen behind you, Dan. So, Dan, I want to take you back to what you're saying earlier about that whole business is a separate entity thing. So, someone listening to this, maybe there's an electrician scooting around in his or her van, got a few employees. Yep, I've got a business and I'm a business owner. And he or she is probably racing off. What's time now? It's 9:30 in the morning. Yeah. They're probably racing off to their third job that they need to go and put out some fires at. What are some ways maybe that you found that our listeners can follow to start to move from I am my business is me to holy crap, this business is separate to me and I need to treat it differently?
Well, I'm going to say two words. And then I'm going to expand upon that. And some people need to go get a tattoo for these two words. And it starts on this principle of capital allocation. And so as a proper business person now, I now understand capital allocation is all that matters. I now know business is a science, right? Business is an absolute science. I know, depending where we spend $1 on marketing, what return I will get for my dollar on digital versus flyers versus vehicle versus word of mouth. I now know how much revenue I'm going to get in. I know how much money we will spend on new tools, new vehicles. I will health and safety, training, office staff, org charts, hiring, premises, right? And all that capital is allocated because I know how much revenue we will get in based on our marketing and partnerships and channel. It's a pure science. And so starting the discussion of those who are listening is your training I'd love you to undertake is getting comfortable that business is scientific. It's literally mathematical, right? It's not a mystery. You can have confidence that once you start building a business based on proper systems and a proper marketing and go-to-market plan, you know that you can guarantee a return in your business. And you know you can execute with absolute confidence that the money you spend will have a result that you can bank on that will allow your business to expand. And so once you've got that in mind, you now go, okay, this business is separate from me. I own the shares in it, but I would like it to work like this, to deliver this return to the shareholders. And so as soon as you start taking that thought pattern, so if you don't know that with absolute 100% certainty, that's your learning to do, right? So your learning is to go, what learning do I have to do over the next year until I understand what on earth he's talking about? Because I know what I'm talking about, because we've got, if we're hiring 3 or 4 new staff every month, right? And we'll be 100 staff soon, and then 120 and 150 and 200. And I'm like, cool, can't wait. And if we're not 200 staff in a few years' time, I'll be like, oh, that's disappointing. What happened there? Why are we not, right? And so I've got that, I expect to be hiring new staff forever now. There's no limit to how big we can get. And so same with my plumbing company, I had no fear at hiring people because I knew how to get new business in, right? I knew how to do marketing and partnerships and channel and word of mouth, and the work would come and we'd hire, and I wasn't afraid anymore.
Coxie is going to use that against me when we stop recording this episode. Something I've resisted for years. We talked about business school and that sort of stuff before. It's my take on that is it's not enough. Okay. I think there's more to business than just doing a degree or a diploma or whatever the heck it is. I think it's an important part of it. No different to just doing one aspect of a trade is enough, right? There's multiple facets.
Sure.
And I am learning to embrace my past, which is nearly 20 years in accounting, finance, and management, basically, and teach tradespeople that numbers are the language of the science of business, as you said, Dan. Mathematics, and it's not complicated stuff. I mean, it's just if you can add and multiply and divide on a calculator, you can do business science. But you have to have numbers attached to things because the numbers are, and we say this a lot, well, I certainly do, to our tradespeople. Electricians are used to looking at multimeters and gauges, and plumbers do the same with pressures, and builders are using a tape measure, and my dad could subtract numbers and divide truss angles and stuff on a block of wood with a builder's pencil like no tomorrow. But when it came to finance, he just didn't transfer those skills. And tradies have such a fantastic skill set because they're used to working with all of those mathematical calculations. It's just doing it in a different environment.
And if you can do scale drawings, you can do business reporting.
It's bang on. And I think, like you said, business is not mystical magic. There's no smoke. There's no seances. It's not organic, and it's not gut feeling and intuition. Neither is marketing. And a lot of people waste a lot of money on marketing because they think it's some magical talent that only marketing people have. It's not an arts degree to be a marketer. It's
pretty simple
mathematics. So I'm loving what you're saying, Dan. And
I'm not saying if you go to university to learn these skills, right?
No, absolutely not. Well, they don't teach a lot of them anyway.
Eh?
They don't teach a lot of this stuff in university anyway.
No, you need mentoring from people who know. To market a trades business is way different than doing software marketing versus marketing petrol stations versus. It's all simple to those who know how to do it. It's like digital AdWords for plumbers is awesome, great. Vans are amazing. The odd flyer is amazing. It's very simple marketing, but gosh, it works.
Yep.
And so, and then you've got to marry that with a bit of experience of knowing that. I suppose that would be the only thing that you have to get comfortable with is trusting that the work will come if you do this. But then after you see it happen after a year, you go, oh, it actually does work.
Well, that's the science aspect, isn't it, Dan? Of scientists test things. They come up with a theory or a hypothesis, then they go and test it, and they go, hey, look at that. My theory was right. Or, yeah, my theory's a bit off. We need to go back to the drawing board, come up with a new theory, and then test that one.
Yes, that one. And so it does work. And so for those, so coming to running, if you're listening to this, if you don't know that business is scientific and trustable, then I'd encourage you to go, okay, even if he's wrong, I'm going to see if maybe he was right.
Do it to prove Dan wrong. There you go.
Prove me wrong that it's not scientific. and now you're being a business owner because you're thinking, okay, because what I wish I was sat down and taught business and then had the guts to go and then borrow $250,000 and grow my business, those first ones through borrowings rather than from cash flow. Because money's so cheap to borrow, right? So cheap. And how much pressure would it take if you were not trying to expand your business from cash flow? Buying vehicles and plant and stock from cash flow is so difficult. And there's no need. It's dumb. You should borrow the money and then just pay back over 5 years and have 3 nice vans and have a nice website and have nice uniforms and nice tools and then just go and execute. It's way easier.
I wonder how much easier these decisions would be to make if we just thought about our businesses as their own living, breathing things instead of an extension of ourselves.
Yeah. And the fear. And so if you've got fear, which is completely good, if you have no fear, that's
You're a
done.
loose cannon.
Yeah.
Loose cannon. You should have natural fear, and you go, but you know what? I'm going to go get an accountant or a bookkeeper or a part-time CFO to check my numbers and give me the confidence that I'm not crazy.
Mm.
Mm.
You know, like you guys are the same as me. I can look at a spreadsheet in 10 minutes,
Mhm.
look at your numbers. And so a CFO is not going to spend days or weeks. He's going to spend maybe an hour checking out your figures. Might cost you $200. It doesn't cost a lot because these things are not complicated. You know, we're not trying to land a moon on Mars or rocket on Mars mess, right? It's simple numbers.
But it takes the, I guess, humility to say I'm okay to seek advice from someone smarter than me. It's admitting that I don't know everything, and that took me probably, how old am I now? How old was I when I could talk? So 40 plus years for me to accept that.
You look so good.
I'm glad you're in another country, but it took me a large part of my life to accept and be comfortable with the fact that there's people smarter than me that can actually give me guidance on what to do, and I don't have to figure it out for myself to be worthy. I don't have to have the answers to be enough, to be enough of a man, a business owner, a husband, a father, whatever. Seeking the answers elsewhere actually requires, again, my personal opinion and observation over many years of working with people, some of the strongest, most courageous people are the ones that go, you know what? I don't actually know how to deal with this. I'm going to go find someone who can give me some guidance. That takes guts.
Yeah, for those who are listening, I voluntarily stood aside at Fergus to put a new CEO in, right? Because I took it to 40 staff and recognised I didn't have the skill sets to take it to the 100 staff, right? And I have no problem at saying I realised I needed someone else who'd been there, done that, and knew what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just a business that I created. I work there, they employ me. And therefore, I'd run out of a skill set to take it to the next level. And what was good for the business was to get someone else and who knew how to get it. Yep. And I'm so glad I did. I'm learning a lot, Now I know what to do. It's been great. But
it's a lot less stressful too.
It's way less stressful. But I've learned a lot watching him do it and going, oh, yeah, I wouldn't have done that. I'm sure we would have got there, but gosh, it would have been very difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas the new CEO has been great. He's done it before. He knows what systems and tools to bring in to get it to where it is now, right? And it's, so therefore I now know I could do it to this level now, if that makes sense. Yeah. I still know I'm going to watch and take it a bit further. It'll be interesting the next journey, right? Again. And so, because touching on your point, I like that thing. What's one of my analogies that I say, you got to look at everything. It's like a 6-sided dice or a 20-sided dice. And so business has about 20 sides to it. So, and for it to work, for businesses to work, it all has to work together, right? You can't separate marketing from sales, from execution to systems to finance. It all has to work together as a complete whole. And if one of those critical steps doesn't work, the whole thing doesn't work. So if you, in your mind, don't know that conceptual picture of all the moving steps, how it has to work, I've written a book for you. Go to Amazon, and it's a 12-step program. And
when's that coming out, Dan?
It's out. It's it actually sold quite a few thousand copies, to be fair, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's about probably 10 key steps that a business has to do all together at the same time for it to work. And if you don't know that, that's another reason why you need mentoring and business training to understand how a business all needs to work. All of those elements all at the same time for it to move forward. And so once you've got that in your mind, you go, okay, I now have all these levers I know that have to be pulled or pushed to move this machine forward. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Speaking our language, Dan.
Yeah.
So I would like to, again, if we just rewind a couple of minutes, there was some conversation in there about people. And it's an area that probably seems a little unscientific to business owners and tradespeople running a business, or even self-employed tradespeople with a few other people that they pay to do some of the work. But how on earth can we apply that science principle to finding and retaining staff, or is it actually black magic?
It's black magic, and if you sign up to my course right now,
just 3 easy payments of $20,000.
Teach you how it's all done. Talk to you all on that channel.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Exactly. Now, people is, you know that thing. It's so true. The brain is the most complicated thing in the entire universe. So therefore, it means people are the most complicated thing in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
However, we've been studying people for 7,000 recorded years of human history, and it's known how to work people out. But it requires, if you're blessed with an interest in liking the human condition, then it's really easy. I mean, I love the human condition, right? I like employing people. I like making willing workers that want to be somewhere, right? And I know how to do it but I enjoy it. But that's another science that's well worked out. So I'll give you one of my maxims that I was taught as a 15-year-old by my physics teacher. Extreme examples reveal the hidden truth. Right? So if you want to understand the essence of something, to get to the core, you extreme the examples to try and reveal the hidden essence. And so the example given of what this concept meant was explaining how a car is kept on the road, right? Was it gravity, weight, whatever? And so what he did, he says, what we're going to do, a mental experiment, we will extrapolate the conditions. We'll have polished ice, super flat, super smooth, and really wide polished aluminum tires. And how far will the car go? And if you've got any imagination, you can imagine the car will go nowhere because it's spinning. And he goes, cool, now we'll put really chunky rubber tires on. And does the car go? And we go, yes. And so what's the answer? The answer is friction, right? It's that little bit, right? But the extreme examples revealed the hidden truth. It's only friction keeps the car on the road, not mass, not gravity, not momentum, just a bit of friction. So what's the most extreme examples we can think of to think about the human condition to try and reveal a hidden truth? And so this is my insight that I'm going to share with all of you. The most extreme example is that the military has worked out how to get young men to run into bullets and die. Right? So the armed forces have worked out how to get someone to run into bullets and die. And the answer is, when you boil it all down, they don't die for their country, they don't die for the cause, they die for the guy next to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They die for their little team. It's like, we've got to do this to keep ourselves all together. So the answer to building a team, a good little company, is what are you doing to build an awesome little team where everyone cares for each other?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the foundation of which the businesses I've built are on that foundation. And I wrap it up in this saying: is the quality of your relationship is dependent on the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of your relationships. Shitty relationships equals a shitty life. So therefore, how can I build a culture at work that's really nice and supportive so everyone wants to be there? Right? How does that look? And so I called it the Nana culture. Because everyone likes going to Nana, right? Everyone likes going to Nana. Nana's awesome, right? Nana never yells at you. Nana always gives you some warm food, and she's always kind. She's always there for you. You like going to Nana? You don't let your Nana down, do you?
Mm.
No, because you don't get any apple pie.
Yeah, well, you don't want to hurt her feelings because she's so nice. Right? But Nana can still be firm. So how do you build a Nana culture, right? And so every firm needs to work that out for themselves, right? So we had non-negotiables for sure. But like one of those things I learned was put office people in to call the tradies to get their hours and descriptions, whatever. Don't yell at them. Help them out. Right? Make sure you really care about their health and safety. Make sure you buy them good uniforms and good boots, and make sure they're not working too many hours, and have a health insurance policy if it goes wrong. Have free counselling. have nice employment contracts that are generous, right? All these little things that actually add up to a big thing, or it's a really nice place to work. Right? So it's one thing I did. The other thing I did was wanted a place, understanding there's always going to be a labour shortage, always, right? Always going to be a labour shortage. So in those 8 years I was growing the business, and remember in 8 years I grew it from 1 to 23, 24 people. I think I started about 40 apprentices in that time. And so I decided, because I've been through understanding there's always no labour. So, okay, I'm just going to build a place that's just always employing apprentices all the time. Because I worked out they're only truly useless for about 4 to 8 weeks. Right? After that, they're very good at carrying ladders and digging trenches. And I say the saying, you don't have horses doing donkey work. Right? So tell the traders, mate, you're not packing the van up. You're not packing leads up. You're not digging trenches. You're not drilling holes. The apprentice is doing that. Right? So I know I don't have apprentices on maintenance because it doesn't add up financially. So you're doing renovations, you're doing housing, you're doing drainage, you're doing water mains, you're doing gutter unblocking, and they're doing all of that. And after 2 months, they can go clean a gutter themselves. They need no training for that, right? And so but what having lots of apprentices does two things in a business. Gives you a good pool of labour always coming through. Some stay 6 to 8 years, some stay 6 or 8 months, whatever. By and large, if you're doing it right, most of them end up staying for quite a few years and you make good money, right? But I'm smart about it. Like, I'm making sure I'm making money off them very quickly. I'm prepared to invest 2 months into them, or they're useless, but after that, they're on jobs where they're adding money. Teach my tradies how to maximise the value by, mate, they're digging trenches, not you. Because it's dumb to have a qualified tradesperson digging trenches and drilling holes and getting out leads. That's just poor utilisation. So don't do that. But the other thing what it does is it gets rid of grumpy tradesmen. Because I don't want a tradesperson who doesn't want to teach. So, and what it is, there's lots of tradies who like teaching. And it's really pleasant to have a nice apprentice who likes to be taught, and it's nice to teach someone. It's quite rewarding to teach young people who are trying to learn. It's really nice. And so you end up with a really nice culture of guys, and who doesn't like having an apprentice? It's great having an apprentice, isn't it, on the bigger jobs, right? And so the tradesman's getting a break because he's not doing all the hard, just cutting concrete, breaking concrete out, lugging leads and ladders around. He's got a hand. The jobs are getting through quicker. They're training someone. And you've got labour coming through when the tradies move on, right? So you're trying to build a good culture where people don't want to leave, right? So I don't even mind people leaving me trying to better themselves, because I think the tension, being a business owner, is you're trying to make your workplace so good that they don't want to leave. And you expect, I also want my tradies to earn bloody good money and have a good life. In many ways, I'm a socialist. And so therefore I expect my tradies to be pinched and poached. So, but if I lose a good trade member, that's on me, because I did something wrong around not paying them well or making a good enough environment that they didn't want to stay. I didn't put in the right communication, psychological safety for them to communicate that they were unhappy with me. Right? It's a good saying, people don't leave businesses, people leave people, right? It's not always true, but it's a pretty solid thing, right?
Yep.
So therefore, what pathways are in place for the tradies to talk to someone about what it's like to work for me? Because I'm a bit of a prick in some ways, right? Very demanding. Like, I get what I need to do, but I can be very demanding, as maybe you could tell. But I realise I can be very demanding, right? I realise I got very, very exacting high standards that very few people can achieve. I realise that. But I put other people in place that they could talk to who had the confidence to talk to me, right? And so you've got to do that. You've got to provide a pathway that they can communicate to you through someone else. So you can get the pulse check of why they're not happy working. And that's bloody great. Otherwise everyone would have left. It's complicated, right? It's complicated working for someone who's driven with high standards, who's taciturn, right, and forceful.
This could be why I've worked on my own for the last 23 years.
Right. So you have to recognize if you're a strong force of personality, which a lot of these, I read these things, the applicants for best in business, the similarities of business are all similar. They're all strong, stubborn, self-willed, stupid.
They're all blokes.
They're all blokes.
Pig-headed blokes.
Pig-headed. But I recognize that in me and recognize that people can't talk to me. So I had other people that they could talk to who could then talk to me, right? So you're doing that. So what you're doing is you're stopping the top end leakage by putting in a good culture where you actually do care, nanoculture, but then you also made a pathway that they could communicate that was non-threatening. So I was getting that, and then I was filling the bottom end by just making us a training organization of just bringing through apprentices all the time and understanding that some would leave and some would stay and not caring, because I only had a 2-month window that I was prepared to tolerate someone being completely useless before they could add some value. And so once you get that on board, you then start realizing, oh, I'm just going to create my own labor resource. And then that's fine. And you just become a hiring place, and then it's fine.
Yes, those last few words, this goes back to what we were speaking about earlier, I believe, around changing the way we think as business custodians. You used that term before we actually pressed record. So I'll just bring that in because I thought that was a great way to look at being a business owner, is really a custodian of another entity. It's like being a parent. We don't own our kids. We just, we care for them until they're actually independent enough to go and do their own thing.
Or in jail.
Yes, or divorce us because we were such a tyrant as a parent that they want nothing to do with us. But imagine if your business was actually, you were a labour hire business, you were a HR labour force business, and that's such a great way to look at it, is thinking differently about, instead of, we don't buy employees like we buy equipment and then we flog the crap out of it until it doesn't work anymore, and then we discard it and we go buy a new one.
Correct.
Actually, you just need to acknowledge that people do things for emotional reasons.
Yep.
And you've outlined a system, it's science. It's a little less cut and dried than accounting and bookkeeping and finance, and yet it's still a system. Yep. It's still following a formula that actually creates that.
I think the mindset I have with people, see if you agree or disagree, might need fleshing out. I think it's really important for business owners to get to this mindset, is that people are awesome. Like, people are awesome, but they're going to let you down all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Mm. It's part of the formula.
But yes, and the part of the formula that makes this work is you expect you're going to be let down. So part of your systems inside your business is to have build it in a way that you're checking, so that when they let you down, you catch it.
Mm.
So my way of the things that we would do is we would just have that lady that would call them to get their hours in for the timesheet every day, because I just know that was a perennial problem. So that's a system to catch it. We had to do gas certs, right? And everyone hates doing gas certs, so it's fine. I just paid a guy $15 a cert after hours to do the gas certs, so he loved it. I mean, he could bang out 8 certs an hour. He's getting whatever. How much is that? Gosh, whatever, $105, right? But it happens because I expect my guys to not do it on site. Fine, just put a system in process that it does get done. And then once you start putting that process in to allow that the people are going to let me down, then it's fine.
I was reminded recently, speaking with one of our tradiepreneur clients, and that example that you've just given as well, Dan, dovetails into that. Often I hear employers lamenting the fact that they have a giraffe that doesn't swim like a dolphin.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get this bloody giraffe to swim like a dolphin, instead of going, well, actually, I've got a giraffe. Yeah. How can I actually acknowledge that? And instead of trying to make it do something that's not in its nature, acknowledge that and then create some sort of a system. Maybe you got to strap some paddles onto its feet and give it a floaty device so that it can actually still swim across the river. Shocking analogy, but we need to actually make changes externally as employers rather than wishing that our people would fill out the paperwork properly every time, or read the crappy job notes that we write on a piece of paper instead of doing a how-to video or some sort of checklist for them. And I think that's what maybe the intent of the blame the system, not the person adage is really all about. We go around wishing that people were different instead of creating a system that they can actually work within.
Yeah, like I'll use a much better analogy than you used.
Thanks. Can you clean up my mess for me, Dan? I'm a typical business owner.
Yeah, I'm going to clean out your mess. I'm going to give you the right story for this analogy. So the right parable is I think we've talked about it before, the frog and scorpion about to cross the river, right? I talked about it to you last time.
Yes.
Right, and halfway across, for those who don't know it, there's a frog and scorpion at the River Volga. And the frog's about to swim, and the scorpion asks for a lift. And the frog goes, "No, you'll sting me." And the scorpion goes, "No, I won't, then we'll both drown." And the frog goes, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Hop along." Halfway across the river, the frog goes, "Ow!" And he goes, "What did you do that for?" And the scorpion goes, "Because 'tis in my nature." Right? And so when you own a business and you employ people, what is their nature? And don't fight that nature. Tradies don't like, the reason they're tradies is because they didn't want to do paperwork. They like to create things. So therefore, forcing them to do paperwork is against their nature. And anything that's against someone's nature, they will avoid. And so as soon as you expect there to be avoidance, and you go, "Oh, yeah, it's natural, I hate it as well." Cool, I'll employ someone who likes doing detail and paperwork. Then all of a sudden, your business goes away. Do you want to know how I've changed my life in the last 6 weeks?
Tell us.
I finally decided to take some of my own medicine, and I've employed a virtual assistant to read my emails and book all my calendar appointments, and she sits virtually, and makes me pay my bills once a month. She's just virtually sitting there while I pay my bills. Right?
Love it.
And it has changed my life because I'm now accountable to someone who helps me do my detail because I hate it. Changed my life. I just decided to apply my own rules of like shut up and pay. SAP, SAP, shut up and pay. And it's like changed my life. It's like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm so fresh and youthful and full of vigor, because I'm on top of my life.
I think this comes back full circle to, when we start thinking about our businesses as their own entity, these decisions, again, are so much easier to make. You play into the skill set that you have. Most tradies don't have paperwork skill set. Maybe they're not even great at team. I'm sure they're good at people because that's a big part of being a tradie in the first place. So taking the skills that you have, sharpening them with the right mentor or advice, and then getting the right people in place to do those bits of business that you're not great at. Suddenly you have a business that functions well. And
then the tradie can earn $100 an hour, right? So he goes back on the tools while the people are doing all the back end office work. That's the smart thing. Why would the trader who can earn the most money sit in the office? It doesn't make any sense.
Righto. So we've got a whole bunch of listeners who have just realised that perhaps there's some stuff that they didn't know about business, and they're going to go off and study maths and science and do it a bit differently.
Gosh, if that's the message they've got, we've done this all wrong.
But I think that's the mystery for a lot of people. Again, just based on my own observation over the last 10 or 15 years, I think there's misconception about what it takes to succeed in business. And it's not, people look at, the Elon Musks and the Sir Richard Bransons of the world, and they think they've got some magical genetic makeup, or that, they were born with a silver spoon up their butt. And while some of those things can have an impact on the timeframes in business, and external factors certainly play a part with timing and opportunities. You talked about opportunities earlier, Dan. Our decisions in the moment, whether to take an opportunity or pass it up, they certainly play a part. And it's doing the gritty, hard work, which is not the site work, it's the self work and the
Yeah.
willingness to seek out a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
How's that? Is that as good as your frog and scorpion analogy? I reckon I still like my giraffe one better. Like the visual is just so much better.
Yeah, I just think with pedals, it's just couldn't do it.
I hope there's a cartoonist somewhere listening and they can draw up this giraffe with paddles on it.
Yeah, someone draw me a giraffe on
And a
a
floaty.
stand-up paddleboard with some flippers, swimming like a dolphin. It's probably a good analogy for how most businesses run.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. So I know we're going to hack over the same edge, but to sum up your summing up, I made myself laugh.
Should we get our lightsabers out now and just see who's got the biggest lightsaber?
What I hope you've taken from this is that if you don't know that business is a very safe thing, business can be really safe and fun. And if you don't know that, I would hope that would encourage you to go and find out what you need to learn so that you can be in that same position.
Okay, that's a lovely bow. I enjoyed that. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Right, let's stop wrapping the present and putting sticky tape all over it.
There's about 6 bows on that thing.
Yeah. And look, as is always the case, I think our previous episode or episodes we did with you, Dan, there is so much depth to the well that we could keep dipping into it for hours. We won't, because our listeners have paid work to go and do, so they need to press stop on this episode and crack on with it. I just want to say again how awesome it is to be working with Fergus and your team, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure. I guess experiencing some of the people within your organisation and the passion that they have and the team that you and the rest of the leadership team, I guess, have pulled together. And it's great to have Fergus supporting the Excellence Awards. And we're pretty excited about the future with companies like yours that get it, in inverted commas, that just get it. So listeners, if you are sick of doing paperwork and if you've been listening for this episode, you would recognise the fact that you might need to change your systems. Obviously, go check Fergus out. It's a cracking program. As you can hear, it's been developed by a tradesperson who's been on the ground and experienced it all, made all the mistakes. So go check that out. Is it fergusapp.com?
No, Fergus.com. Did you know we got voted best in class in the world for Fergus Club?
Oh, wow.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah.
.com. We are the best in class in the world for what we do.
That's
Brilliant.
incredible.
It's incredible.
There you go.
Well done.
So do check it out, listeners. And other than that, we're going to put the present under the tree and leave it alone.
Leave it alone. All right, the Cape Crusader.
Thanks, Dan. I love overthinking with you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad we haven't got in the same room with a couple of beers yet.
It's going to be a long night.
Late night, yeah. Mate, pleasure as always. Thanks for being so abundant with your time and your wisdom. And we look forward to chatting with you again on the show sometime soon.
Oh, me too. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Dan.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Tradies in Business podcast with Warwick Bidwell and Nicole Cox. Find out more about today's guest, tools for your trade business, and other cool stuff at tradiesinbusiness.com.au.